Once again, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second week of our free FSVP compliance familiarization training. I'm Jezreel from the Customer Success Team at Consultare Inc. Last week, we covered the products program under FSVP 1.501. Today, we will be focusing on FSVP 1.502 Requirements Program as outlined under 21 CFR Part 1 Subpart L, also known as the Foreign Supplier Verification Programs or FSVP for food importers. This program ensures that U.S. importers verify their foreign suppliers are producing food in compliance with FDA safety standards, specifically confirming that imported products are neither adulterated nor misbranded and provide the same level of public health protection as food produced within the United States. We will review the core responsibilities of FSVP importers, including conducting hazard analysis, evaluating and approving suppliers, performing verification activities, and maintaining thorough records to document compliance. By understanding and applying the FSVP framework, you'll not only meet regulatory requirements, but also enhance your reliability, safeguard public health, and strengthen your position as a trusted importer in the US market. By the way, this free training is sponsored by Consultare Inc., a compliance company. Founded in 2007, we began by assisting businesses with US import and export compliance and have since evolved into a global provider of food safety, quality, and certification support. Today, our services revolve around compliance management software, specialized training, and end-to-end support services that help organizations achieve and maintain compliance with international standards. Through our platform, interlinkiq.com, we offer an integrated compliance management system that streamlines documentation, monitoring, and audit readiness. We also provide dedicated compliance and certification support programs for FSVP, PCQI, SQF, PRCGS, FSSC 22000, ISO 9001, GMP, and HACCP, helping businesses strengthen their regulatory compliance, enhance operational efficiency, and ensure alignment with global food safety and quality management standards. Let's review our training schedule. For this week, we will focus on FSVP Requirements Program. In today's session, we will begin by familiarizing ourselves with the FSVP 1.502 Requirements Program. We will then move to a detailed description of the program requirements, highlighting the importer's key responsibilities under 21 CFR Part 1 Subpart L, specifically supplier evaluation, verification activities, and record-keeping obligations. Next, we will go through the compliance action activities or action items, which are the scheduled tasks performed on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and semi-annual basis to maintain compliance and ensure continuous readiness for FDA inspections. We will also cover the annual review or internal audit activities, which serve as essential checkpoints for ensuring that your FSVP system remains effective, up to date, and compliant with FDA expectations. After this section, we will open the floor for a Q&A session where you will have the opportunity to ask questions and clarify any points about implementation or documentation. And as part of this training, you'll also gain access to a free 90-day trial of the FSVP compliance management software designed to help automate compliance schedules, track suppliers' verification activities, and maintain complete audit-ready records. And finally, upon completion of this familiarization training, you will receive a training certificate. To ensure that you receive your certificate, please make sure that you have filled out the free certification familiarization training sign-up form that we shared with you in the chat box. On the screen, you will see the sample of the familiarization certificate that you will receive upon completing each session. With that, let's move forward to our training session. where we will be working directly with the FSVP Compliance Management System software. So let's start by going over the description of the FSVP Section 1.502 Requirements Program. Please take a look at the description on the screen. For the overview, it says importers must develop and maintain a foreign supplier verification program, or FSVP, for each food and supplier to verify that imported foods meet applicable U.S. safety standards. For the general requirement, first is to ensure food is produced under U.S. preventive controls or produced safety rules. Next is to provide equivalent public health protection consistent with U.S. standards and ensure food is not adulterated or misbranded under FDNC Act Section 403. For the core FSVP elements, this includes hazard analysis as highlighted in Section 1.504. So you need to identify hazards and determine who controls them. Supplier evaluation, it includes assessing the suppliers based on hazard risk, compliance history, recalls, and audits. Verification, Section 1.506, conduct risk-based audits, testing, or record reviews depending on the hazard level. For the corrective actions, address failures, stop supplier use, re-verify, or notify the FDA. Re-evaluation, reassess every 3 years or when new risks arise. And then for the importer identification, include the FSVP importer in customs entry filings. And for record keeping 1.510, retain FSVP records for at least 2 years and provide them to FDA upon request. For the qualified individual or the FSVP QI, a qualified individual with proper training or experience must develop, implement, and oversee FSVP activities. The QI is responsible for hazard analysis, supplier evaluations, and verification procedures. Also, part of the requirement for Section 4 is modified requirements. This is applicable for very small importers. So for very small importers or VSI, certain suppliers or low-risk foods may qualify for reduced FSVP obligations, but the importers must retain proof of eligibility for modified requirements and maintain documentation for verification. For ongoing oversight, the FSVP QI or the importer must maintain continuous FSVP implementation and monitoring across all suppliers and products, reevaluate the FSVP when supplier, product, or process changes occur, clearly define role and responsibilities among the importer, broker, and agent to ensure compliance accountability. Next is the program objectives and summary. So you have here the objective, the requirement, and the evidence of compliance. First is you need to develop your FSVP. You need to verify your suppliers, maintain documentation, use a qualified individual or a QI, and ensure compliance. So we will be discussing this in more detail throughout this training. And then for the practical implementation tip, the importers are encouraged to maintain an FSVP master compliance register, which includes the following. First, list of all suppliers and associated food products, hazard analysis results and verification methods, audit, test, and verification schedules, corrective action and reevaluation history, and qualified individual or QI responsible for each record. So this register ensures transparency, consistency, and traceability across all FSVP activities and supports FDA audit readiness. So you can update, edit, or change the description as needed to reflect any revisions to the FSVP requirements in the future. So to implement this program, we have created a list of action items in the compliance tab. So this section helps the importer or the designated FSVP QI stay organized by scheduling tasks according to frequency, whether they are daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or semi-annually. So here are some examples of your compliance action items. or the tasks that you need to perform to comply with FSVP 1.502 Requirements Program. First is you need to verify that imported shipments match approved suppliers and covered FSVP products. You also need to confirm supplier documentation such as certificate of analysis, lot testing, shipment records, and they should meet the FSVP and product specifications. Part of your daily task is to review customs entries to ensure correct FSVP importer name and DUNS number, and monitor FDA import alerts, recall postings, or notifications for affected suppliers or products. For your weekly action items, this might include reviewing your supplier communications for updates like the audit results, regulatory notices, or certifications. Check for new FDA import alerts, enforcement actions, or recalls. Confirm each newly imported lot links to its hazard analysis and supplier approval record. Verify FSVP documentation is organized, dated, and retrievable. For your monthly action items, this includes reviewing sampling of import records or documentation completeness and compliance, track progress of open corrective actions or supplier deviations to ensure resolution, review any new or modified products and initiate hazard analysis as needed, and confirm supplier certifications like HACCP or GFSI certifications, and they should remain current and valid. For your quarterly action item or action items, this includes evaluating supplier performance for complaints, rejections, deviations, and inspection outcomes, audit FSVP records for accuracy, completeness, and retrieval compliance, review supplier risk rating and update verification frequency based on performance, verify importer, broker, and agent responsibilities remain clearly defined and documented, and hold a quarterly review meeting with a QA or FSVP team to discuss findings and improvements. For your biannual or semi-annual action compliance action items, this includes conducting a comprehensive review of verification activities like audit reports, test results, or corrective actions, reassess supplier risk ratings and approval status based on performance and incidents, evaluate equivalence of suppliers' food safety system to US standards, review and document QI competency and training currency, and summarize biannual FSVP program performance and present to management for review. So basically, this serves as your checklist of compliance activities that you, as the importer or the FSVP QI, needs to perform. You can either add your own compliance action items, or we can preload the activities that you need to perform to make sure that you are compliant with the FSVP requirement. Now, to complete these activities, we've also provided specific um, work instruction for each action items. So the corresponding work instructions are found here in the instruction and evidence column. Let's pick one action item and check the associated work instruction on how to perform or how to complete this action item. Let's pick the second one. Confirm supplier documentation like certificate of analysis, lot testing, or shipment records meets FSVP and product specifications. So to complete or to perform that specific compliance action item, you need to first collect supplier documentation for each shipment. So you need to request and obtain certificates of analysis from your suppliers, lot testing results, and shipment records from your foreign supplier for every imported lot to support verification under FSVP. So you need the artifacts or records that needs to be completed are your supplier certificate of analysis, lot testing report, shipment record, or product specification sheet. Next, once the documentation are in place, you need to review the certificate of analysis for specification compliance. So you need to compare the COA results, the parameters like microbiological, chemical, and physical parameters against the approved product specs and acceptance criteria established under FSVP. So you need your COA verification checklist and the product spec sheet for you to do the comparison, as well as COA review lag. Next is to validate lot testing results. So this can be performed by confirming that supplier provided lot testing data meets importer defined safety and quality limits, and verify that testing was conducted by an accredited or approved laboratory. So your artifacts or records includes lot testing report, laboratory accreditation certificate, or ISO 17025 accreditation, and then QA review form. Next is to check shipment records for traceability and consistency. So you need to ensure that shipment records like your bill of lading, packing list corresponds to the correct supplier, product, and lot numbers listed on the certificate of analysis and test reports. So this should reconcile the information on the shipment records must reconcile with the information on your certificate of analysis and test reports. So you need to have your bill of lading or the supplier's bill of lading, packing list, the shipment verification checklist, and traceability log. Next is you need to decide whether to approve or reject the documentation provided based on compliance. So you need to approve documentation and release product only if all supplier records meet FSVP and product specification requirements. You need to reject or hold shipments for missing or non-conforming data pending corrective action. So you need the product release authorization form, or your non-conformance report, corrective action request, or your hold release flag. Next is to file and maintain verification records for audit readiness. So you need to organize and retain all certificate of analysis, lab testing, and shipment verification documents as part of the FSVP compliance file to support traceability and FDA audit requirements. So these are your step-by-step activities on how to complete the action item, which states that confirmed supplier documentation meets FSVP and product specification. Now let's check a sample documentation uploaded as proof of compliance or evidence of compliance. In this case, we have uploaded the FSVP supplier verification record documentation review. So let's check on this document. So it contains, or it provides evidence that the importer, which we name Pacific Harvest Imports as an example, they verified the supplier documentation, including the certificate of analysis. So they have checked the certificate of analysis, and then they also provided notes and findings such as the parameters like moisture, results, oil, salt, and other parameters, as well as microbiological test results for salmonella and listeria. Then other document type that um, they assessed are lot microbiological testing and shipment export records. So it confirms that the foreign supplier, which we named Agroverde Foods Ltd, produces food that meets FDA safety and product specifications. Overall, it demonstrates that the importer's due diligence and ongoing compliance with the FSVP program. So this is just a sample evidence of compliance to complete your action item. Your aim is to complete every compliance action item here and turn all no into yes, so you are confident that you are compliant with the FSVP requirements. Next, let's go over the annual review tab, which also serves as your gap assessment tool. This tab is designed as an internal audit checklist. And as you can see, it is in the form of questionnaire, aligned with the FSVP requirements. It lists all required annual review items to help you maintain compliance with the FSVP requirements. Now let's check some of them. First, annual review item or question is, has an FSVP been developed and maintained for each imported food and supplier? So it is important to note that uh, an FSVP program should be developed for each product or each imported food and supplier. Next is, are all imported foods produced under preventive controls or produce safety standards equivalent to US requirements? Do imported food provide equivalent public health protection to US standards and are not adulterated or misbranded? Has a written hazard analysis been completed for each food, identifying known or reasonably foreseeable hazards? Have hazard analysis been reviewed or updated to reflect any formulation, supplier, or process changes? Has each supplier been evaluated based on food safety risk, compliance history, and performance? Are supplier approval records complete, current, and supported by appropriate documentation? Are supplier verification activities like audit, testing, or record reviews conducted at risk-based frequencies? Are results of supplier verification reviewed, approved, and documented by the FSVP QI? Have all supplier nonconformances or deviations been addressed through documented corrective actions? So you have here a lot of annual review questionnaires that you need to address to make sure that your process, your products, and your suppliers meet the FSVP requirements. So let's take an example of how to complete an annual review item. For the question, has an FSVP been developed and maintained for each imported food and supplier? So for the work instruction, these are the steps that you need to perform. First is to initiate FSVP requirement review. The FSVP QI will verify that each imported food and its foreign supplier are covered under an established FSVP in accordance with the requirement. So you have the FSVP master list or your import product list. Next is to develop FSVP for each imported food. So the QI shall establish an FSVP for each imported food, identifying the applicable hazards, verification activities, and supplier controls to ensure compliance with US food safety standards. So you have to prepare an FSVP plan per product as well as hazard analysis worksheet. Next step is to identify and approve the supplier. So the QI will verify that each foreign supplier has been evaluated and approved based on their food safety performance, verification results, and compliance history. Next step is to maintain FSVP documentation. So the QI shall ensure that all FSVP documentation for each supplier and product are maintained and updated as necessary. Then you should conduct periodic verification. The QI will perform scheduled verification activities like record review, audits, or sampling to confirm that the supplier continues to continue to produce safe food. The frequency shall be based on supplier risk. Next is to review nonconformances and corrective actions. And finally, annual program review. The QI will conduct an annual review of all FSVPs to verify program effectiveness. Now let's discuss the evidence of compliance to complete the annual review question. So for this assessment questionnaire, has an FSVP been developed and maintained for each imported food and supplier? Let's take a look at a sample of an FSVP program for a specific product. So let's say ABC Imports LLC has developed an FSVP program for plantain chips. So this is the specific to one imported product or food. So you have here the importer information, the supplier information, as well as the product information and the product name. So this record provides documented evidence that the importer has developed, implemented, and maintained a foreign supplier verification program or FSVP for each imported food and supplier. So it confirms that the importer, which is ABC Imports LLC, has verified essential FSVP elements, including hazard analysis, supplier evaluation and approval, verification activities, corrective action procedures, and record keeping. So it demonstrates or outlines that the status, verification dates, and corresponding notes for each documentation component demonstrates the importer's continuous compliance and proactive oversight in alignment with the FSVP requirements. So then again, it's just a sample of compliance, and your goal is to turn the status of every annual review questionnaire from no to yes to help you measure compliance progress while also preparing your products, your facility, as well as your supplier for a potential FDA inspection or audit. Now let's move on to our Q&A session. Please feel free to ask any questions about today's topic. You can type them in the chat box, or you could also email your questions to us at hello@consultareinc.com. In the meantime, we invite you to join our other free certification familiarization training conducted every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time. Topics include FSSC 22000 certification, SQF, BRCGS certification, FDA food code, and 21 CFR parts 117 and 111, or CGMP for human food and dietary supplements. You may also schedule or request for a one-on-one FSVP coaching session for personalized support with your specific FSVP requirements. That ends or that concludes our training session for today on FSVP 1.502 Requirements Program. Your training certificates will be sent directly to your registered email addresses. We also invite you to join us again next week as we discuss our next topic, FSVP Personnel Program. For those who have not filled up the free certification familiarization sign up form, please feel free to do so and specify if you wish to get your free 90-day software. If you have any questions, clarifications, or feedback regarding today's training, please don't hesitate to reach out at hello@consultareinc.com.